Governor Connolly's wife said, "Mr. President, you can't say that Texas doesn't love you." And he said, "No, you certainly can't." And those were the last words he ever spoke.
The most important piece of evidence in the JFK assassination may have vanished inside the government's own vault. John F. Kennedy's murder already gave America Dealey Plaza, the grassy knoll, the Zapruder film, Lee Harvey Oswald, Jack Ruby, and more unanswered questions than almost any crime of the 20th century. But one mystery sounds so strange it almost feels invented. After Kennedy's autopsy, his brain was removed, preserved, stored, transferred, and eventually placed with other medical evidence. Then by 1966, it was gone. Not misplaced for an afternoon. Gone. The brain, tissue slides, and other materials could not be found. As we get started, tell us in the comments whether you think this was bureaucratic incompetence, a Kennedy family secret, or evidence of something darker. Today, we're looking at how JFK's brain vanished from the National Archives. The evidence.
By the time that first agent reached the president, it was already almost too late. The president had been shot twice, and it was the immediate call to go right to the hospital.
Kennedy was shot in Dallas on November 22, 1963. His body was taken from Parkland Hospital back to Washington. That night, the autopsy was performed at Bethesda Naval Hospital. The official conclusion was that Kennedy had been struck from above and behind. That finding helped support the case against Lee Harvey Oswald, who had been positioned in the Texas Schoolbook Depository. During the autopsy, Kennedy's brain was removed for further study. Witnesses later described the damage as severe. Former FBI agent Francis O'Neill, who was present, recalled that more than half of the brain appeared to be missing. The brain was preserved, placed in a container, and eventually sent into government custody. In a normal case, that would be where the evidence trail became boring. In the Kennedy case, that's where it became suspicious. The locked trail.
We are no closer to having a sharp picture of what happened to our president. If we had the brain, there would be small particles from whatever bullet struck him in the head. Those particles could be analyzed, but we don't have that brain, so we're left with question marks.
The brain was reportedly stored in a stainless steel container with a screw-top lid. It was later kept with other autopsy materials, including tissue slides and related medical evidence. The materials eventually went to the National Archives, where they were placed in a secure room connected to Kennedy's former secretary, Evelyn Lincoln, who was organizing his presidential papers. That sounds orderly enough, but the chain of custody was already sensitive. These were not ordinary records. They were the physical remains of a murdered president, tied directly to the most disputed shooting in modern American history. Then came the discovery that changed everything. In 1966, when officials looked for the material, the brain was not there. The tissue slides and other autopsy items were also missing. The government had lost the evidence no one should have been able to lose. The photo problem.
8 different sets of photographs, known with confidence to have been taken during the autopsy on JFK, are not in the official collection today and never have been.
The missing brain would have been strange enough by itself, but decades later, another question emerged. Were the brain photographs in the archives actually photographs of Kennedy's brain? Douglas Horne, who worked with the Assassination Records Review Board, argued that the existing brain photos showed too little damage. He believed they did not match descriptions from people who saw the real brain after the shooting. O'Neill also raised doubts. When shown the photographs, he said they looked almost like a complete brain, which was not what he remembered from the autopsy room. That claim is explosive, but it's also disputed. The review board itself did not issue a final assassination finding. Still, the photographs added fuel to an already burning suspicion. If the brain was gone and the photos were questionable, what exactly was the public allowed to see? The RFK Theory.
He gave great confidence in people who lived in other countries, great confidence in the United States and in its leadership, and that we were dedicated to certain principles and ideals, and that we would live up to them and, if necessary, fight for them.
One theory points not to the CIA, the mob, or a hidden gunman, but to Robert F. Kennedy. Some writers have suggested RFK may have taken or arranged the removal of the brain. The reason, in that version, was not necessarily to hide a second shooter. It may have been to protect his brother's private medical history. Kennedy had serious health problems, and he took medications the public did not fully understand at the time. That theory has a strange emotional logic. RFK was grieving, angry, protective, and deeply aware that his brother's image had become part of national memory overnight. Still, it remains only a theory. No one has produced the container, no one has produced the brain. No one has produced a clean explanation for how material this important disappeared from official custody. The darker possibility.
Certain people in our government tampered with critical evidence to make sure the American people would not know the truth about who murdered the president. And that's about as bad as it gets.
For conspiracy researchers, the missing brain points in a different direction. They argue the brain could have shown the path of the fatal bullet and possibly whether Kennedy was struck from the front. That matters because the official story depends heavily on shots from behind. If the brain showed something else, then the entire lone gunman conclusion would be thrown into doubt. The House Select Committee on Assassinations later agreed Kennedy was struck by shots from behind, but it also found that he was probably killed as part of a conspiracy based partly on disputed acoustic evidence. So even the government's later review did not fully calm the waters. The custody question.
In item number 9 were several autopsy slides, tissue slides, and also several boxes of paraffin tissue samples. And so there's something very unusual about the way the whole thing was handled.
What makes the missing brain even harder to explain is this was not some ordinary piece of paperwork sliding behind a cabinet. This was physical evidence from the murdered president of the United States. It should have been watched, logged, protected, and handled like one of the most sensitive items in American history. That's why the chain of custody matters so much. The brain was removed during the autopsy, preserved, transferred, and eventually tied to the official record. At every step, there should have been a clear answer to one simple question: who had it last? Instead, the story becomes foggy. Different officials handled different parts of the medical evidence. The Kennedy family had its own interests. Federal agencies had their own procedures. The National Archives had its own storage process. Somewhere inside that maze, the most controversial medical evidence from the assassination simply disappeared. That's the part people cannot get past. If it was lost, it suggests a stunning level of carelessness around evidence that could shape history. If it was taken, then the next question is worse. Who had the power to remove it, and what were they afraid the brain might reveal? Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think JFK's missing brain was lost through confusion and bad record keeping, taken to protect the Kennedy family, or removed because it showed something the public was never supposed to see? Let us know in the comments section below.